Okay, I'm going to be tying a Mullet Gurgler. It's a variation of a regular gurgler. Tying this on a Bob Clouser signature. This is a size 1. And I'm just using 150 GSP. It's just my go-to thread for most things. You could really use just about anything you wanted. Put down a little thread base. This is pretty slippery thread. So I like to just put a little bit of super glue there on the thread base. Let that kind of stiffen up. I'm gonna start with just some bucktail. For most bucktail usage, I'm kind of tying things in pretty sparse. For the tail of this fly, I'm gonna tie in a pretty hefty chunk here. I guess that's all relative, but you can see it's a decent chunk there. Gonna get that lined up, kind of get spread around the hook a little bit. Cinch that down, just tie straight over the butts here. All this is going to get covered, so I'm not worried too much about how this is all going to look. And I'll wrap back and just kind of lay these down a tiny bit more, so they stay kind of tail-shaped, more or less. From here, I'm going to throw in some Flashabou. I don't love a ton of flash in a lot of my flies from my area, so I'm actually going to throw in just white Flashabou here. So I'm going to kind of wrap over twice here and spread it out. And then I'll kind of wrap this back over the top. It just adds a little more movement to things. Don't want it super long, so I'll trim that up a little bit. Take some white saddle feathers, tie those in on either side. Just gonna loosely wrap over twice, get them set, then cinch down. Same thing on the opposite side. Wrap over loosely. Get the length that I want. Tiny bit more. And then I'll cinch down. Then I like to throw a grizzly feather right on top. Just starts to add a little variation to the kind of the top and the bottom, belly and the back of the fly. By no means is this absolutely necessary, but I like to do it. Once again, too, I tied in that pretty hefty clump of bucktail earlier, and I think because I'm adding so much around this, it kind of tames it down a little bit. So I kind of like it to be a little heftier. Occasionally, if I'm having a hard time with a feather setting, because the feather is like a little stiff or whatever, I will just throw a tiny bit of super glue on top there. I want to make sure I've got the length that I want, and then I'll just kind of lay it how I want and wrap over very lightly as to not twist it. Then I'll wrap down here, cinch that down pretty well, and then I can come back in and wrap back over a little. All right, so there's our tail. Nothing too fancy there. This is a relatively simple tail. I have a EP style brush. This is my own homemade one. You could easily make a dubbing loop with a Nor-vise if you wanted, and do one on the vise. I just tend to make a brush whenever I can. And so have this one lying around and it will work well for these uses. So I'm gonna do like 3 wraps over here and then kind of tie this down, but I'm not gonna clip it off. And you can use comb to kind of brush this out a little bit. My preferred tool is this kind of like toothbrush looking dubbing brush. You can do whatever. From here, I'm going to tie in my foam. So I actually just super glued together some white and some gray. They look very close in color, most likely, but mullet colors, which is what I'm tying. So I'm going to cut down a strip of this. I want it a little bit longer than my hook shank. By no means do you need to do this, but I'm going to trim down, kind of taper one end. There's absolutely no, well, I'm sure you could find some functional reason, but really no good functional reason to do that. It's just a preference thing. I'm going to wrap over and cinch down lightly. I don't want to cinch down too hard, especially with this GSP. It's really strong stuff and it will cut through your foam pretty easily. And then I'm going to kind of wrap back up, and I'm going to go to about 1 hook eye worth from the front. And now I'm going to resume with that brush. And so I'm going to wrap. I'm not too worried about this being absolutely exceptional looking in terms of my wraps. I'm just trying to build up some mass here. And depending on the density of your brush, you can decide whether you want touching wraps or you want to kind of spiral wrap up. It's all variable. I don't think the fish really care. All right, I've gotten up to the front here. Like I said, I try to leave about a hook eye worth-ish from the front that's exposed. Clip that brush off. I like to kind of wrap back over the end of that brush just to keep it durable. And then I'll brush this down, kind of away from the foam. Get everything loosened up first, and then, yeah, down and away. And then from here, I am ready to go back over and tie in the front of this gurgler. This is the part that's gonna be pushing the water, so it kind of naturally will start to stick up like that, which is what I want. Kind of fix our tail back here. It's getting a little unruly just from all the activity here. So I'm gonna throw a couple thread wraps up front just to almost prop this foam up. Like that, that'll do just well. From here, this is completely optional. I just do it because I fish things with eyes harder than I fish things without eyes. I have some tab eyes. You can kind of see those there. And I'm just going to tie these in right where that crease is of the foam. I've got these stuck to my fingers here, so bear with me 1 second. All right, so I'm going to tie this one in on my side here, and then I will flip it so you can see what I'm referencing. More or less, that's where they're going. And then what I do, just to keep this as durable as possible, is throw a little super glue on there, stick it down. You could hit it with UV resin if you wanted as well. These are relatively quick and inexpensive flies, and where I'm throwing them, some might get eaten by bluefish. They're pretty toothy fish. I'm going to be throwing these mostly at redfish and speckled trout here on the coast of North Carolina. So do with that what you will, but I'm not overly concerned about the durability of the eyes in the grand scheme of things. Ultimately, the durability of the entire fly will probably go down just after a hard day of fishing, ideally, if there's been lots of topwater hits. So I'm going to hold this down, kind of get that set with the glue. Trim off the little tab eye portions. They're very sparkly and shiny. Okay. And really our fly could be done here. I'm going to give it a little extra love, so I'm going to trim this down just a tiny bit. I'm going to round off or kind of square off my corners. This is just personal preference. There's no real good reason to do that. I'm going to whip finish. 5-turn whip finish or so. Should be fine. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit of a trim down here. You can trim this as much or as little as you want. I'm just trying to be mindful of the general shape of a mullet. So they are not very tall and narrow, like a bunker or a Menhaden pogey, whatever you want to call them, would be. They're kind of more rounded and longer relative to their height and width. So that's kind of where I'm gonna leave it off. Take it out of the vise here and just preen everything back and see, maybe I want to trim a tiny bit more, but it's easy to get pretty nitpicky about it, and ultimately it's a fly to fish, not a fly to put in a shadow box or something. So there you have it, a mullet gurgler. Pretty good action in the water. It's gonna make a little activity, ideally entice some predatory fish to come in. Hope you enjoy. Thanks. Bye.